Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kanchan Balodi, and I teach English in Ramagya School. And I've been in the field for over a decade now. In that time, just like you, I sat through a lot of debates about how English should be taught. And most importantly, what is important? Is grammar important or is communication important? So, in the next 20 minutes, I want to make a case. The case which I hope by the end of this entire talk will leave you with at least one idea which you might wish to try in your own classrooms. Today's talk is called Grammar versus Communication. But as all the educators of English would agree, the reality is not just grammar versus communication, but the concern goes bigger than this. To begin with, I have two sentences for you. A tourist at a cafe goes, asks for water, and he simply says, water, please, thirsty. While, on the other hand, I have a student in the classroom who is sitting, preparing a complex sentence. I have been waiting to drink the water. In these two scenarios, if I look at, and if you would look at, you will realize things are different. The first one, where the tourist is asking for water, we realize there is no grammar structure. It is broken English, yet the person gets the water. Purpose solved. Communication done. But on the other hand, we see a grammatically correct sentence. Complex structure, yes. Memorized tense, yes. But there is no human connection. It looks as if the child has just learned and reproduce the sentence without even having to think of the connection that languages can build. And this is what we are going to talk about. Is grammar important? Absolutely, yes. But is it the only important thing in language learning? Well, let's see if it is. Grammar is the skeleton, while communication is the body. Everyone focuses on the skeleton. Every English teacher on this planet, as I would say, 20, 30 years back, focused on grammar. We did n number of drills. Even when I began my career, my focus was grammar. Parents come to us, they'd ask us, what are we doing in a grammar class? Why children are not doing certain drills? There are closed exercises, open exercises, but our focus is only and only on grammar. What do we miss? Fluency, the zeal to converse. Conversation dies while we are only focused on perfecting just one particular drill, one particular aspect of language learning, which is grammar. We have to learn that grammar grows naturally. It grows naturally. It is not something which you can memorize. It is not something which you can reproduce without having to practice it in context. So our focus is on skeleton. We forget that there is need for human interaction, for a connection, and that connection is something which communication focuses at. We have already talked a lot about why children are afraid of speaking English. Not just children, I would rather say the adults around us. There are quite nervous adults who go around, they know the tenses rules, they can change active to passive, passive to active, do direct and indirect speech correctly, they can identify adverbs, adjectives, determiners, and you just call the topic and they know the answer. But the minute you ask them to introduce themselves, silence. That is what we all get. The minute we ask them, talk about yourself, tell us about your family, utter silence. And that is what reality of our major students is. So there are three major factors which is holding our learners back. Learners here, I'm referring to both young and adult. So there are three pointers on your screen, as I've mentioned, which I'm going to talk about, although there are n number of reasons as well. So the first one is the factor filter. Now, this is something which every English facilitator is well aware of, just that we aren't aware of the names. So when a learner is anxious, when the learner is embarrassed, when the learner is overly corrected again and again, language stops getting processed and the child freezes middle of the sentence. What do? We go around, we correct the students in mid sentence. We talk about, maybe share your ideas, talk about the world, talk about global issues. And even though the child wishes to speak, but we adults, we have developed this habit where we go and correct and keep on correcting the child again and again and again. And that is where the child becomes quiet. The learner becomes quiet. There is silence all around. The fear of language makes home in the heart of the child. I believe all of us have come across a student who does fantastic when it's come to English grammar, the worksheets that we assign in our classrooms. But the minute he's out, he wishes to make an order, he wishes to go and speak about some issues, he wishes to communicate. We see him all quiet. And this is one of the reasons why our learners are hesitant to share how they feel because they are always afraid. Whether I'm speaking correct? Am I using first form of verb with did? Am I using the right tense? Is the person going to laugh at me? Am I going to get corrected? And this leads to fear, the fear of being able to communicate. Secondly, we live in a diverse country. We forget that. How ironical it is that we are living in a country where plenty of languages are spoken. Many of us are multilanguage speakers. Some of us are bilinguals as well. Some of us are polyglots. And that is where we forget that our students also come from multilingual backgrounds. So most Indians, they have one particular idea. So they think in a language, they then translate, and then eventually they speak in English. Now, the problem is by the time they are stuck in this translation loop, the conversation has ended. Somebody has answered, somebody has shared the idea. And in this particular factor, we realize the native speaker, he just feels discouraged. Even though the learner knows the particular rule, even though the learner is well aware of what to speak, when to speak, and how to speak, even, but because he or she is stuck in this translation trap, there is no communication. So the child, the learner, feels again discouraged to share their ideas. The third thing we have cognitive overload. Now, the issue with us, with our classrooms, not just our classroom, but at our place, is we expect a lot from our learners. We want them to do anchoring, we want them to do public speaking, we want them to do debates, MUNs, TED, podcast. We want them to participate in discussions and we want them to do everything, everything, but we forget that they are humans. So every skill that we want our learner to learn, it puts a cognitive overload on them. So the child might not have that mental bandwidth. And maybe we are forcing the child to juggle all the stages together. And that is when we see it becomes a mechanical process. Children also feel brain fog, just like adults, simply like adults, because a lot is happening around them. So they need time, they need some leisure time to sit and maybe somewhere they can just listen to ideas, just listen to things when they are relaxed and they are able to speak out. So, as a student, the best thing we can do for them is to make them sit and do simple tasks with them. Let's not force them to do things which they are not ready for. Let's not put all our expectation in one go. Let them express how they genuinely think about something. Now, let them decide whether they are interested in debates, whether they're interested in discussions, whether they like creative writing, even. Let them decide for themselves why and when they are interested in doing something, and let them forget to be afraid. So, these are the three major reasons which personally feel that our learners are being held back because they are afraid. We have put a lot of expectations on them. And then our habit of overcorrection. Speaking of the problems brings us, what should we do now as pedagogical leaders, as educators, especially as someone who is in the field for quite some time? It becomes our first and foremost responsibility to not just teach the learners what to learn, but at the same time, how to do it. So instead of telling about certain worksheets that needs to be given, give 50 questions, 100 statements, and let the child practice, 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 are we actually encouraging them to practice to learn something? Or are we just putting undue pressure on them? What are we teaching to our learners? So it is time for us to reimagine our classroom, to reimagine that sacred space where they are unafraid to test, to try, and to get the desired outcome that they wishes for. There are certain things which we can work. Number one, instead of teaching them, today we are going to learn tenses, or today we are going to do models. Let's not do that. Instead of giving them the topic right away, don't do that. Grammar is important, but it is not the only important thing that is needed. We want the child to practice. We want the learner to be enthusiastic about the language. Otherwise, once he or she loses interest in the language, leave grammar, communication will become a difficult task. So, the best thing you can do could be prompting. Pick out prompts which are simpler, which are easier. How was your day? What did you do? Simple questions like this. Would you like to try something? And then eventually, gradually introduce whatever is the target that you have set for them for that particular day. Introduce a target language. So give them the context first. Ask them how do they feel about it and then name it. Next, fluency. Let's work on fluency. We have a habit of stopping our kids mid sentences. Let's not do that. Delayed corrections, as I call them. In a classroom, give students task based learning. Assign them a task, form groups, give pair work, let them stand and do their bidding, let them talk, let them see what they're doing. And as an educator, as a facilitator, our task is just to take simpler notes which one could be the common error that the learner is making. What is actually happening there? What do you think needs to be improved? And as we take down our pointers, after the task is done, ask them to sit and then do the remediation. This will not only encourage the learners to feel confident as they communicate, but at the same time, as we do remediation, it will be targeted one. Context is the king. This has been my philosophy. I completed my Cambridge CELTA, and from there, one of the important things which I learned and I corrected in even my own classroom is to give context. Never give students statements which does not have a context. Give them stories. Ask them what's happening here. A news headline would be the best thing that you can give. It's easily available. Cafe menus are there, brochures are there. Maybe you can find certain messages, emails. Pick them up and ask the student what would they do. If there's a problem, ask them for the solution. And as they build step by step, as they communicate, you will see grammar will naturally find its strength there. And it will be easier for you to do remediation, and the child will not be scared. Moving ahead, there are two ideas which I would like to share with everyone, and especially how it will change our perspective towards languages. The first one is called the lexical approach. Lexical approach could be understood in a simpler manner. We have to understand one thing: language is not built in vacuum, it is built from chunks. So instead of giving word of the day or individual words, let's give them phrases. Let's give them chunks like, how are you? By the way, of course, yes, or I'll get back to you. And how's it going? What's up? And whenever a child uses these chunks, appreciate that child. It might sound quite a tedious task. I agree, completely agree. But once you start doing it in the classrooms, we realize that children would eventually improve. They will be using these chunks in their day to day life. They'll feel confident because they know a certain group hours where they will not go wrong, and that will build their confidence. This will not only help in their communication but will strengthen their grammar as well. The second thing is fossilization. It is the correction, the fear of correction at times. Now, what happens mostly whenever a child would start speaking something, maybe about the day, maybe about their idea of something, maybe he just wishes to tell you about a problem, or maybe just wishes to share something that might have has happened at the school. Our first concern is whether he's speaking correct English or not, and we just go and we correct. We feel, what if the student might keep on repeating the incorrect sentences? What if the child does not learn correctly in one go? What if he is repeating the same error? Please understand, you have to let the child speak. And you, I am referring to both parents and educators, including myself. We need to have some space for our learners where they should be engaged with the language. They should be entrusted with the language. And imperfection can always be perfected. There is always room for correction. As long as the communication is alive, the brain remains open for refinement. But the minute we see silence, there won't be any correction. So it's better the child speaks imperfect language at the beginning than not to speak anything. Some actionable shifts which I have brought for all the educators, parents, and learners. Now, a simple way of doing certain things are there on the screen. If we speak about the actionable shifts, we need to understand, after speaking of the problems, after speaking of how we can rectify something, we really need to have certain activities, certain actionable points, which we can bring to our classrooms. Most importantly, there are three stakeholders who are impacted because of the language: the educators, the parents, and the learners. For the educators there who are listening to me, stop measuring outputs and start measuring courage. In your classroom, please run one fluency slot per week, 5 minutes of free speaking. Let them speak whatever they wish to speak. Give them a topic, give them a free hold, let them make conversations. And as they speak, your job is only to jot down the errors that they are making. Just take out 2 to 3 errors. You don't need to make five. I mean, you don't need to make a list of it, of 5 or 10 errors. No. And then present it on the board. No need to call out the name of the student who made that error. And then your job will be to simply bring the remediation. Anonymity will encourage the learners to speak more, to pay attention to it. When the child is comfortable with the language, he or she is always able to make those connections. To all the parents, it's my humble request, please do not only correct but model. It simply means when your child speaks incorrect English, don't just sit there to correct him. It's okay if the child is using second form of verb with did, or maybe first form of verb with had. It's okay. Let the child speak, and then gently correct it later on. Don't correct mid sentences. Please do not do that. Model it. Sit with the child. Read books. And I would say, please do it on daily basis. Develop the habit. 10 minutes of reading every day. Sit with your child. Not only that, there are English cartoons or shows which can be watched together. That it will help you. Have discussions in English and don't ask the learner.
Recording.
All right. So we were talking about a few actionable shifts. So for the parents, as I was talking about, never correct and always model. So spend time with your child. Maybe ensure that you are sitting with them, learning, reading, and most importantly, you are there to help them build a connection with the language. And for the learners, well, you have to understand there is no end to practice. The ideas that you have are valid, and the gap between your language fluency and your ideas, it is not at all permanent. So speak first, edit later. Be fearless when you speak something. Every sentence, every chunk that you practice, it is not a test, it is it is something that will build your confidence. A tip which I would like to give you, create your own chunk notebook. Jot down pointers, jot down phrases that you learn, and use them. Repetition is the key. The more you repeat, the more you'll be able to go ahead with. And find somebody with whom you can communicate. Grammar will follow. Moving to the next part, well, that brings us to the last segment. While I have talked about grammar and its implication in communication, we must remember that grammar ensures that the bridge of communication that we are holding is steady. And communication is why we cross it in the first place. So let's just first work on our communication and let grammar come on our way naturally. Well, with that said, thank you so much for being with me here. I'm glad that you heard me speaking about grammar and how it develops naturally with communication. Talk, communicate, and see how things work for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Kanchan. Can you stop sharing your screen? Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions to ask you, ma'am. How do you balance fluence practice with curriculum requirements?
Well, fluency practice and curriculum requirements are not actually different. So, in a classroom, we can actually do it in very simple manner by simply doing some pre-reading exercises. Let the child answer, let the child discover. We need to engage the learners as much as the learning outcome demands. So, fluency is something which will help us in sharing our ideas, but at the same time, our learning outcomes will be achieved.
Great. So, what age groups respond best to the lexical approach?
Well, I think but technically all age it is applicable for all the age groups, but I find there are teenage groups which is age 13 to 18. They have a lot of ideas to share, and sometimes they lack the vocabulary. So when we speak about the chunking methods and asking them about how certain things are going ahead, the teenage group works best.
So, you spoke about parents, you have guided them and all. And how do you handle parents
Mhm.
who insist on grammar focused teaching?
Well, in that case, I like to ask them why do they feel grammar is important. I like to understand their why first. So Many parents who come to us, they have the same question. My child is not able to speak because he's not confident with grammar. But if we see it through my perspective, the child is not able to speak because we are not giving the opportunity to speak. We are in autocorrect zone. So I rather help them gain a perspective that language can be built if we allow the child to speak. And thankfully, so far, parents do agree with that.
So, ma'am, each child is unique. Some are shy, some are outgoing, some wants to talk, little less confidence, a little slow learner. What
Yeah.
prompts work best for reluctant speakers?
For reluctant speakers, prompting works the best. A good educator is the one who knows the child, who understands the child. We do have students who would not speak a word, not because they cannot speak, but just because they don't want to. In that particular case, we can develop some task which engages everybody, where everybody is required to contribute. And we need to give them a particular environment where they are comfortable to share their ideas. Let's not give them topics which might require a lot of research. Maybe ask them about automobiles or superheroes. These techniques work fantastically in grade 9th and 10th. These kids, they are reluctant to speak at times. It's not that they don't wish to, it's just that sometimes they feel underconfident. Sometimes the topics are not of their liking. So for these learners, we need to understand what they like and what they don't, and then a lesson can be curated in a manner where every learner's requirement can be fulfilled.
So your approach is different, ma'am, and you have given proper guidelines to the teachers too. What are common mistakes educators make when implementing your approach?
Well, oh, so when we talk about the common mistakes which educators make, thinking that it does not require any preparation. So with this approach, it looks easy, but it is not. One must properly plan the activities. One must think about the learners who are there and their learning requirements as well. A classroom is a diverse sphere. Plenty of students are there. Some of them might not share the same language. Some of them might not understand the topic. So, if we are not planning well in advance, if we are not thinking in advance, the approach will fail. It will not give us the desired learning outcomes. Whatever we insist on teaching the learner, it is not important. What the learner will learn, most importantly, and how he will learn is what should take the center stage. So, most of the educators, they think that this approach is not effective because it might look easy. But in reality, every easy activity requires a lot of planning in the background. So, planning is something which I feel educators fail.
Ma'am, we all grew up hearing that reading is very important. Read as much as you can. What role does reading play in developing natural grammar?
When we talk about reading, the most important aspect of reading is to make the learner familiar with words, with ideas. There are learners who are voracious readers, but they might do well in standardized tests, and that is okay. Children are able to form connections if they are familiarized with the concept beforehand. Reading is a natural way of doing it. They can pick the book of their choice. They can read whatever they wish to. And once they come across the same chunks of words, the same ideas, and if those ideas are repeated in the classroom, they get a sense of familiarity. And that sense of familiarity will definitely help them. And this is how they actually learn grammar naturally. First, they know where it is used, and then once the rule is introduced to them, they are able to relate to it. So it becomes a natural process in that way.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Kanchan, for this insightful and thought-provoking presentation. We truly appreciate sharing your expertise on our platform today. Before I end the session, anything else you want to mention?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And I'm really glad that we could speak about this topic. I really wanted to share about this, and your learning platform have given me that choice. So thank you so much for that. I'm glad that we were able to talk about it. And maybe this will begin a conversation which every educator might think.
My pleasure to host you today, ma'am. Have a great Sunday.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you so much.